Welcome to the Compact Mysteries podcast from compactmysteries.com, the show where we try to unravel a different bite-sized mystery each week, from baffling disappearances and strange objects to unexplained events and mysterious places. This is episode 50, the Roswell Incident. In the summer of 1947, something unusual happened on a ranch in the remote deserts of New Mexico. About 75 miles northwest of the town of Roswell, ranch foreman William Mack Brazel was riding the dusty pastures of the J.B. Foster Ranch when he stumbled upon a curious field of scattered debris. At first glance, it looked like the aftermath of a crash, but there was no obvious aircraft, no fire, no signs of impact. Instead, Brazel saw an odd assortment of metallic-looking scraps, paper-like materials and strange rubber strips. These fragments were unusually lightweight, yet strong, and they did not resemble anything he had encountered before, either in machinery or in the natural environment. The rancher, unsure what to make of the discovery, gathered some of the material and stored it under cover on the property. He mentioned the find to neighbors and later brought some of the debris into town to show the local sheriff, George Wilcox. Wilcox, perhaps equally puzzled and intrigued, contacted officials at the nearby Roswell Army Airfield, the RAAF, which had been active during the Second World War and remained an important military installation in the post-war years. Given the rising interest in aviation, espionage, and unidentified flying objects, the report of this mysterious wreckage was treated with urgency. Soon military personnel were dispatched to the ranch. Major Jesse Marcel, the intelligence officer at the RAAF, visited the site and collected more of the unusual debris. Marcel later became a central figure in the story, stating decades later that what he saw was not of earthly origin. The military transported the wreckage back to the base for analysis, where initial reports described it as a flying disc, a term that immediately captured public imagination and tied the event to growing rumors of alien spacecraft. On the 8th of July 1947, the Roswell Daily Record published a now famous headline declaring that the Army had captured a flying saucer. The excitement, however, was short-lived. Within 24 hours of that announcement, military officials issued a follow-up statement that completely reversed the claim. They now said that the debris had come from a weather balloon, not a flying saucer or anything of unusual origin. A press conference was quickly organized, during which officers displayed fragments of rubber, foil and wooden sticks, supposedly the same materials found on the ranch, to explain the matter as simple meteorological equipment. This abrupt change in the story left many observers scratching their heads. For some it was a reasonable correction, for others it was the first sign of a deliberate cover-up, and that impression would prove difficult to shake. To fully understand how the Roswell incident captured global attention and became a lasting mystery, one must consider the historical backdrop. The year 1947 was a pivotal moment in American history. The Second World War had ended only 2 years earlier, ushering in a period of intense technological development and military secrecy. The Cold War was taking shape, with the United States and the Soviet Union entering a high-stakes arms race. National security was a growing concern, and both governments were investing heavily in surveillance, aircraft innovation, and missile technology. The idea that something might fall from the sky and land in the New Mexico desert felt uncomfortably plausible. At the same time, something else had taken hold of the public imagination, the notion of unidentified flying objects. Just a few weeks before the Roswell story broke, a civilian pilot named Kenneth Arnold reported seeing a group of strange, fast-moving objects while flying near Mount Rainier in Washington state. He described their movement as resembling saucers skipping across water. Although he never used the term flying saucer himself, the phrase was born in the media frenzy that followed. Headlines across the country picked up on his sighting, and by early July, Americans were scanning the skies with equal parts excitement and anxiety. Roswell, already steeped in military presence and strategic value, suddenly found itself at the center of a cultural phenomenon. With fear of Soviet espionage and nuclear warfare lingering in the background, the idea that something unknown, possibly alien, had landed on US soil struck a deep nerve. People were eager to believe. They wanted answers. And when those answers were removed or revised by military authorities, it only deepened suspicion. The gap between what was said and what was seen became the fuel for an enduring conspiracy. The materials recovered from the Foster Ranch outside Roswell have become the stuff of legend. Eyewitnesses described a debris field roughly several hundred feet wide, with odd, unidentifiable fragments scattered across the dusty landscape. Among the most frequently mentioned were pieces of what looked like tinfoil or aluminium, which were said to return to their original shape when crumpled, a phenomenon difficult to explain using known materials of the time. Others described small beams or rods bearing strange markings that some later compared to hieroglyphics or unfamiliar symbols. Major Jesse Marcel, the Army intelligence officer who helped recover the wreckage, claimed in later interviews that the materials were unlike anything he had ever encountered in his military career. He described the metal as extraordinarily lightweight yet extremely tough, and the writing as both unusual and impossible to decipher. Marcel's testimony, given decades after the fact, helped reignite public interest in the Roswell case in the late 1970s and gave UFO researchers fuel for further inquiry. In addition to the debris, there were persistent rumors of a second, more sensitive discovery: bodies. Some witnesses, many of whom came forward years later, alleged that the military recovered the remains of humanoid beings at a second crash site. These accounts, often vague and unverifiable, described small greyish bodies with large heads and delicate limbs, matching the now familiar grey alien archetype popularized in science fiction and later abduction narratives. Though there is no concrete proof that bodies were ever recovered, the rumor has never been conclusively disproven either. Adding to the confusion were inconsistencies in the accounts of those involved. Some reports stated that the debris was flown to Wright Field in Ohio, now Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, a significant hub for classified aerospace research. Others claimed that additional pieces were quietly sent to Fort Worth, Texas, where a staged photo opportunity was organized to show weather balloon parts in place of whatever had actually been found. The nature of the materials, combined with conflicting testimony and official silence, created a fertile ground for suspicion and myth-making. The initial claim of a flying disc capture was retracted swiftly by the military, replaced by a much more mundane explanation. The wreckage was from a downed weather balloon. In particular, it was later linked to Project Mogul, a top-secret program designed to detect Soviet nuclear tests by using high-altitude balloons equipped with sensitive microphones. According to official documents declassified in the 1990s, the debris found in Roswell matched the materials used in these experimental balloons: foil reflectors, rubber, balsa wood, and tape. From the military's perspective, the case was closed. The mystery object was no mystery at all, but part of a classified effort that could not be disclosed at the time. Once Project Mogul was made public, the Air Force issued a new report in 1994, asserting that the Roswell incident had been thoroughly misunderstood and that no alien craft had ever been involved. A later report in 1997 addressed the allegations of recovered bodies by suggesting that witnesses had likely confused crash test dummies used in high-altitude parachute experiments with extraterrestrial remains. However, not everyone was satisfied. The timing of the retraction, the lack of clear documentation, and the insistence on secrecy only deepened public doubt. UFO researchers argued that the weather balloon story had been hastily concocted, and that Project Mogul, while real, did not account for the more unusual elements reported by witnesses. Some pointed to the advanced nature of the debris and the odd symbols as evidence of a craft not made by human hands. More extreme theories went further. These suggested that the US government had not only recovered a crashed alien ship, but had also transported the remains of its occupants to secret facilities for examination. Area 51 in Nevada is frequently cited in such accounts as the alleged destination of the wreckage. Over the decades, an increasing number of former military personnel, contractors, and civilian witnesses have come forward, claiming to have witnessed or heard things that contradict the official narrative. Skeptics, of course, argue that these later testimonies are shaped more by cultural storytelling and UFO lore than by direct evidence. The Roswell incident has become so embedded in American pop culture that separating fact from fiction is almost impossible. Still, the unanswered questions, the contradictions, and the strange combination of secrecy and media frenzy ensure that the debate continues. There are several reasons why Roswell has remained such a potent mystery. First, the combination of initial military confusion, shifting explanations, and secrecy created a vacuum that speculation filled. The 8th of July press release about a flying disc was retracted within hours, making Roswell a textbook case of the government changed its story. Second, the incident occurred at a moment when flying saucer culture was emerging. The public was tuned to wonder and fear of the unknown, and the concept of extraterrestrials was becoming mainstream. Third, the absence of clear physical evidence, alien bodies, or verified spacecraft means the case can be argued endlessly but never resolved. It became less about what happened and more about what people wanted to believe. Finally, Roswell gained new life through popular culture. Movies, television shows, books, and tourist attractions capitalized on it. The city of Roswell itself leaned into its fame with UFO-themed festivals, alien memorabilia, museums, and annual gatherings. So do the more mundane explanations stack up? Several sub-theories attempt to explain the Roswell debris without resorting to extraterrestrial spacecraft. One plausible idea is that the debris came from a series of high-altitude balloon trains carrying equipment, not simple weather balloons. The military's Project Mogul fits that description. Another theory suggests that accounts of alien bodies stem from a later conflation with dummy drop tests. In the 1950s, the US military dropped anthropomorphic test dummies from high-altitude balloons. Some later witnesses' claims align with these operations. The 1997 Air Force report argued this possibility. There are also proposals that more than one crash occurred in the region, perhaps a balloon train and someone else's craft, but none of these remain verified. Metal detector searches and amateur explorations in the area have failed to locate any alien artifacts conclusively. Today, the Roswell incident is less about the debris and more about how modern myth is made. It stands as a case study in how a factual event, combined with secrecy, a changing narrative, and popular imagination, can transform into a legend. For believers, it is proof of the government hiding contact with extraterrestrial life. For skeptics, it is a cautionary tale of mispresented evidence, memory distortion, and the power of myth. For historians, it is a fascinating cultural phenomenon, not just about UFOs but also about trust, secrecy, and how communities respond to unexplained events. Roswell, New Mexico, has embraced its cosmic fame. UFO-themed tourism fuels its economy. What was once a remote desert town is now a global destination for anyone fascinated by the possibility of life beyond Earth. In scientific and aerospace circles, Roswell serves as a warning about transparency and the consequences of changing stories. It reminds us that when official narratives shift rapidly, trust can vanish very quickly. A story that began with foil and rubber on a ranch now echoes through decades of literary, cinematic, and cultural reference. I hope you enjoyed that episode of the Compact Mysteries podcast from compactmysteries.com. If you did, why not leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts? And while you're there, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you would like to support us more directly, please consider buying us a coffee. Head on over to compacthistories.com/mysteriescoffee to see how. Also, please check out our other Compact podcasts. You will find them all at compacthistories.com. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.